Hey guys, you'll notice tonight a solo in it. Me and Matt, we're missing one over here. Michelle's gone. So welcome to SoulWhat, our Soultopia podcast with Matt Stoker and myself, Roger Welch. And we have
Always pumped
Sasquatch.
tonight. Yeah, there you go, Sasquatch.
Yeah, we had to. Michelle was finishing out her book, her third revisions, and she was trying to get that done because it's due in a couple of days. So she's knocking that out. And tonight our guest is Jeff Stewart. How you doing tonight, Jeff?
Hey guys, I'm doing great. Just happy to be here. It's a pleasure and honor.
So we met, I'm thinking, 4 years ago at the Para Unity over in Granbury, right? This is probably like 4 years ago, maybe 5?
Four or more.
Yeah.
It's been a while.
Yeah, been a while. So tell us a little bit about your history, what you're up to, what you're doing.
Oh gosh, my history had an encounter with a strange, upright, walking, hairy, man-like creature on the Sabine River when I was 15 years old. And that started me on a journey of a lifetime to investigate and try to discover what I saw, and prove it or disprove it, not necessarily to the masses, but to myself. And it's led me to be part of 5 books that have been written, and been on 9 or 10 different television shows, and I've also made a few movies about Bigfoot. So it's been a wonderful journey.
I've actually been at home, and you're one of those days when I was working, and I was not actually working. I was at home, sitting my ass on the couch, watching TV, chilling under the AC, and flip on Animal Channel, and I'm like, oh damn, there's Jeff on TV.
Yeah, I get a lot of messages. My friends are like, "Man, I'm watching you on TV right now," and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, am I embarrassing myself? Is my mother going to be upset?"
Right,
that kind of thing,
Yeah.
And I've got to say, I've had some really positive experiences with television. A lot of shows that I've been on, I was really worried about, them editing things in order to make me look like an idiot or something, because they do those things. Once you film something, when it goes into the hands of editors, the editors, they're not even the people that are in the field. Most of the time, the editors are back in California somewhere in a studio, and they don't even a lot of times have an interest in cryptozoology. They don't know, even a lot of times, other than movies, they don't even know what Bigfoot is.
Right.
So you worry about that, but I've had a really positive interaction and made some really good friends in the entertainment side of cryptozoology. A lot of people don't understand that most of your shows that are on TV are for entertainment purposes. These shows are not scientific documentaries where you've got people out there that are gathering evidence and doing it in a clinical way in order to send it back to a laboratory and all that. They're just out trying to make a show that's interesting for the public to watch.
It's to get viewer count, right?
Yeah. I was lucky. The Finding Bigfoot episode I was on was one of their highest watched shows. I think it was a 9 million person viewing audience.
Wow.
On that one, I think is what it was. And so I was very pleased with it, and made a lifelong friend in James Bobo Fay. He and I just hit it off, and matter of fact, we were talking yesterday.
He seems like a really true to earth, down to earth, good guy.
Well, I'll tell you how good he is. A couple of years ago, my insurance would not pay for my medication. And I had put on social media that I was upset because my insurance wouldn't pay for my medication. My phone rang immediately, and it's him on the other end, and he says, "What pharmacy do you use? Give me the name of that pharmacy." He said, "I've got my credit card in my hand. I'm going to call them. I'm going to buy your medicine, and I will buy your medicine until your insurance is cleared up."
Yeah.
And I said, "No, man, it's going to get cleared up. My wife's on it. We're going to get this cleared up. You don't have to do this." He said, "Well, I'm right here ready to go." And that's how good of a person he is.
Yeah,
he was willing. And I mean, my medicine was like $1,300 without insurance.
Right.
But he didn't care. He was ready right then to do that for me. And that's just how good of a guy he is.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually, I think I got it through your page one day and friended him, you know, his actual friend page on Facebook. And he accepted it. I mean, like that afternoon. It wasn't like, you know, sometimes you'll see some of those, but it was his friend page. And he accepted through it. I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool.
He's the same guy, just like you and I, you know, we've sat down before and just sat across the table and just had a conversation, just shot the breeze. And that's the kind of guy he is. You can just sit down with him and in 20 minutes, you feel like you've known him your whole life.
Yeah. Yeah. I could see that. Definitely could see that. All right. And I may butcher this story, but I remember you telling me once, it was Bear when he came to Texas, and it was kind of cold, and you were out scouting with Bear, and bent down and picked up a snake and tossed off this trail. Wasn't that you that told me that one time? Bear Grylls? Bear Grylls?
Who was I with?
Bear Grylls?
No.
Or who was it?
That was when I was out with Les Stroud.
Les, yeah. Yeah, and just bent over and picked the snake up and just tossed it off the. I was like, shh.
I'm not made for
we were
the
actually
outdoors.
out, and it was cold. And this is what was odd about it. We were scouting a location that we were going to be setting up some camera traps and things in for his Survivor Man Bigfoot series. And we're out in the woods going down a creek bank, and here's a cottonmouth sitting right there. I mean, just in the trail. And it's one of those East Texas days where the day before it was 70, and then the next day it's 50 degrees.
Yeah.
So, you know, boom, there's a snake. Oh my gosh, there's a snake. I reached down, grabbed the snake, you know, and set it off the trail. And all of these Canadians are with me, and they're like looking at me like, isn't that a deadly snake? And I said, yeah. And they're like, wow, you're the man. And I'm like, guys, honestly, it's 50 degrees out here. This snake is so cold and lethargic. it's not going to bite anything. But I do handle a lot of the snakes on my Facebook page, my social media pages. There's lots of pictures of me with cottonmouths and copperheads and rattlesnakes and different things like that I catch by hand. I've been doing this my whole life. I'm not an amateur at doing it. I don't suggest anyone reach down and pick up a snake of any kind, especially if you don't know what you're doing, because there are a lot of snakes that look similar to rattlesnakes and things, your rat snakes and stuff. And if you misidentify a rattlesnake as a rat snake, you could, you know, end up with a very, very, very serious bite.
Yeah.
So please don't do it. Go to my pages and look at my pictures and go, wow, this guy's nuts. But yes, I did do that with the Canadians.
Yeah, I remembered part of that story, and I was like, that's just amazing to me. I had a second cousin, and he would come from Mississippi to Texas to do the rattlesnake roundup, and he literally had pits at his house where they'd go back and raise the rattlesnakes for, you know, the meat and the skins or whatever. But he'd come out and do the rattlesnake roundups, and that was probably back had to be like in the 80s probably. And do that.
I think the big roundup, they have it in Sweetwater, Texas is where it's at, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, but he'd come every year from Mississippi just to do the rattlesnake roundup and go back. But you may see him out in town, and he would have some little snake. He always had snakes maybe in his pocket carrying around town with him. He was totally off the rails. I always thought just off the rails, carrying them around in his pocket and whatever.
I literally have my wife, the bless her heart, she's married to me. Everybody can feel sorry for her. Sharon, first date that we went on, we were driving down the road, and a very large, we call them chicken snakes. They're a darker form of rat snake. It was about a 6.5 foot long one. It was going across the road. I locked the brakes up on the truck, slid to a stop, jumped out of the truck. It went up a small tree on the side of the road. I chased it. I climbed the tree, got the snake out of the tree, and it was our first date.
Nice. And she went on a second.
Yeah.
Well, then later on that same date, we were on that same piece of road, and there was a copperhead in the road, and I stopped and got out and got the copperhead, and she wouldn't roll down her windows for me to show it to her. So I like held it up to the window so she could look at it closely and everything. And then I released it off the road. But, you know, I'm the kind of guy that when I see a turtle or a snake or something on the road, I will stop and move them off the road.
Yeah.
And, you know, people are like, well, don't you, you know, like eat snakes and things like that? Well, yeah, but I still don't want to see one get run over.
Right.
You know, there's a big difference in if you take one for dinner, then, oh, look, a snake, let it get killed, you know, let it get run over. So that's kind of, you know.
Yeah. So you know, you always talk about, well, we talk about it as Bigfoot hunts. And it never fails. Somebody's going to say, well, what do you hunt Bigfoot with? What type of gun? You get that question. I know you do. Because I get that question.
I get that question all the time because people, when they see a lot of pictures of me, I'm armed.
Yes.
All the time.
Well, you don't go in the woods. You shouldn't go in the woods without having something with you. It doesn't mean you're going out there hunting for Bigfoot.
And the thing is, I tell people, I'm totally against harming a Bigfoot in any way, shape, or form. If it means that I will never in my lifetime get any accolades for proving they exist or anything like that, I'm fine with that. I carry my firearms for my personal protection because I've received almost 70 stitches in my right leg from a feral hog.
Yep.
Ripped my leg wide open.
It's probably the most dangerous thing out there.
9 times by venomous reptiles in the woods. I have run into meth heads in the woods. I have found meth labs. I have just ran into a lot of dangerous situations in the woods, and I'm not going to go in the woods unarmed.
Right.
But none of my weapons are to kill a Bigfoot. Now, if I was going after one to shoot it, well, the first thing would be, why would you want to shoot it?
Yeah.
That would be, you know, people say they need to be proven that it needs to be proven that they exist, but why would you want to kill one of the rarest creatures on earth just to prove that it lives?
That's exactly right.
I find a huge problem with that. I find an inherent evil in wanting to kill something to prove that it lives. You know, because face it, there's not as many of these creatures out there as what mainstream TV shows, things like that, want you to believe. Because if they come out right out and told you that there may be a few thousand of them stretched out all across of North America, then their show's not as plausible that every single episode they hear wood knocks or they hear howls or they, you know, every piece of property they go to, there's evidence of a Bigfoot. In 40 years of being in the woods, 48 years of being in the woods, I have had 2 face-to-face encounters in 48 years.
Yeah.
I have had a couple of encounters where they either messed with something in my camp or my fish or something like that and found footprints and things. But I have 3,000 acres that's private. Nobody, there's a few people that hunt on it, but you know, they hunt from November to December and then they're gone the rest of the year, and I'm on there all year. So in this 3,000 acres, you know, I find some activity, but it's not like every single time I go out I find something. So I can't see wanting to kill it.
Right. So when you do go out in the woods, what do you typically carry with you? What type of things?
When I'm out, my kit that I carry with me consists of this. Firearms wise, I usually have a pistol on my side, say 9mm or 45, something. It really doesn't matter, even if you carry a 22, because that pistol's probably not gonna save your life by killing something. It may save your life by just making noise.
Right.
If you know a bunch of hogs, you see a bunch of hogs, you can probably just shoot into the dirt and they'll run away. you come up on some meth heads that are wanting to get testy with you, they're not going to like the holes that 22 even puts in them. So they're probably not going to want to get shot. Generally, I carry a sidearm, and I have a little what's called a shockwave, which is a 12 gauge with a 14-inch barrel loaded with buckshot, and it holds 9. That is generally slung over my shoulder. That is when things get serious and you need to put down a charging hog or something like that. In my backpack, I carry 4 or 5 bottles of water, a couple to drink, and then a couple that I use for plaster casting.
Mm-hmm.
I carry plaster of Paris, just a simple, cheap plaster of Paris you can pick up at any hardware store. Carry a Ziploc bag, 2 or 3 Ziploc bags actually, with that in it. That way I can just add the water to the bag and then knead the bag with my fingers from the outside, and then use the bag to pour it in a track. I also carry a shovel, a small military folding shovel, a couple of saws, a lot of paper towels, specimen bags, Ziplocs, as well as paper bags. Carry forceps, tweezers, things like that, in case I find hair samples or anything that I need. I don't touch anything with my hands that I don't have to. Lots of surgical gloves, so that when I'm picking up or touching anything that I do have to touch with my hands, it's not being contaminated. In my backpack, I have a secondary camera other than my cell phone that I can take pictures with. I have a better camera. I have a really nice digital camera with got a 24 megapixel capability and zoom lens, that kind of thing. So I can take better pictures of tracks and different things that I find.
Very nice.
Yeah, I'm curious, Jeff. When you talked earlier about, Roger, I don't know if you know how big of a split the no kill debate is in the in the Sasquatch community. But when I first started looking into it, I was surprised at just how divided everybody was on it. Mm-hmm. But I am curious, Jeff, what do you think if you're on the no kill side without a body? What do you think it would take to prove their existence to a mainstream audience? What are you looking for?
Proving to a mainstream audience, it's going to take nothing really less than that body. I'm just not going to be the guy to provide it unless I find one that has died of natural causes, find remains of some kind that can be brought back and tested to some degree to prove something. My deal is, from what I've seen personally, they are as close to being human as you can get without being human. I've been face to face. They have eyes like ours. They have ears like ours. They have a face like ours. It looks no different from us than we look from an Australian Aboriginal. How can you pull the trigger on that?
Right.
How could I have been, say, an explorer in the Australian continent back in the 1700s or whatever, and saw my first Aboriginal, and look, let's kill it to prove it exists. And it was somebody's dad, somebody's mom. That to me is deep, and I just can't. My heart will not allow me to do that.
Yeah, Roger. I mean, I've talked to people who have been out, and they've had a scope on what they thought was a Bigfoot, and they couldn't do it because it could be a person. I mean, it could just be a person.
That's right.
You never know. So I don't know if we'll ever get there.
What are you going to do if you pull that trigger And when you walk up there, it's cousin Jimmy Joe that's went and rented a Bigfoot costume at the shop, and he's out there playing a joke on you, and you just blew cousin Jimmy Joe's head off.
That's right.
You know, do you want to be that guy? Or what if say I go out next week and I find one, boom, I shoot it, I kill it. Yay me. I got it loaded in the back of the pickup truck. I've done drug it to town and got pictures with me and Billy Bob and everybody else, redneck in the country that wants to get a picture with it. And some scientists come up and they're, oh, Jeff, yeah, we want to take some samples. And they take samples and do the DNA, and it comes back, well, guess what? This is human.
Mm-hmm.
You just killed a human being for no reason other than to kill it.
Yeah.
I have a very big problem with that. But in the same sense, even if it's not, even if the DNA come back and it say it was no more human than a chimpanzee who has, you know, better than 98% compatible DNA with a human being, I still wouldn't kill a chimpanzee if I saw it in the woods.
Right.
Just to prove I saw it. So people will call me a liar. Here in East Texas, we don't have any bears, but I've seen 2 bears in my lifetime. And somebody said, well, why didn't you kill it, man? And I'm like, why would I kill it? I've seen 2 in my life. That means there aren't any here. So killing it would mean there's less than there was. Therefore, why kill it? I don't care if somebody says, oh, you're lying, you didn't see a bear. Okay, big deal. That hurt. Well, so, you know, I'm just on the point. I'm to the point where I don't care if it's ever proven to exist, if it means killing them.
Totally makes sense.
Yeah.
Totally makes sense. What so I know we met at an event. I know you do quite a few events and speaking arrangements and things like that, but this year a lot of them got postponed and canceled out. What do you got? You got anything at all coming up the rest of the year?
Nothing. Everything has been canceled. I had 2 or 3 really nice events scheduled. We had the Southeast Texas Bigfoot Conference.
Yep.
We had oh my gosh, man.
They have the one in Broken Bow too.
Yeah, you know, there was a lot of them that I had been talking with people, and we were talking about booking me, and some of them already had booked me to be at their events, and now they messaged and they're like, sorry, you know, with all of the C-19 stuff and everything going on, we have just canceled our entire event. And, you know, some of them that are now rescheduling are having problems because they can't offer what they were offering before, which now, you know, I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, we don't make to go and speak somewhere. It's not like you get 10 grand to go speak somewhere, but usually, you know, they'll cover your hotel room or food and lodgings and things like that for you.
Right.
And some of the bigger ones will offer you a small fee. You know, a lot of it covers your travel expenses and stuff. But when they're not pre-selling tickets and whenever they don't have a guaranteed gate, they can't offer you anything, and sometimes it's just too much for you to go on your own dime, and it's a sad situation right now. But I feel it'll come back.
Yeah.
You know, as soon as this kind of calms down a little bit, you know, it may be maybe next year, but it's going to come back, and our events and things are going to pick back up, and I have a feeling we'll be back because some of these Bigfoot events are the most fun you'll ever have.
Actually,
the people are salt of the earth. I mean, everybody's shaking hands and hugging and, oh man, I hadn't seen you since last year. What have you been up to? You know, just a lot of the people you see are almost like family.
Yeah. And it's exactly what it is because they all want you to, you know, they kind of invite you in and they remember you. They have a way of just remembering who you are, and they treat you just like you've been hanging out forever. Every single one of them.
And you find that across the board in the paranormal community, whether it's UFOs, you know, ufology, or whether it's paranormal, it's, you know, ghosts and hunting ghosts and things like that, or whether it's metaphysical, any of that. When you connect with a lot of these people, you really find out. I had a really big misconception. I'd always been into Bigfoot and things like that, and I have degrees in religious studies, theology, things like that, and so I have a background in demonology. And so I started out when I was younger. I'm going to do that, and found some of the people I met were just amazing. You think, oh, these are weirdos, because they dress weird, or they're into healing, crystals and all of these kinds of things. Then you're thinking, wow, that's weird. But then you talk to them, you're like, they're not weird. They make sense. They're cool. They're nice. You know what I'm saying? It's like, just because somebody's into a different form of the paranormal than you are, it didn't make them any different. And I found that everybody just was so welcoming and so great that I just don't know why everybody doesn't get involved with going to the paranormal conferences and things like that, because it's the best fun you'll ever have.
And they have a lot of variety of different types of people there that are into different things, and any one of them will stop and they will talk to you. And if you want to know more of what they're into, and because you just don't know, they'll take the time to talk to you and actually explain to you and spend time with you. They don't look at it as like, stop wasting my time. They actually will spend time with you. Just good people.
I've never ran into anybody that was like, get away from me. Quit talking to me. You're bothering me. I've never ran into anybody that was like that.
Yeah. We did the one out at Jefferson. The ghost, the ghost one in Jefferson, and Michelle spoke. Well, she was speaking about how to use crystals protecting during ghost hunting and all this other stuff, and these ladies come running to the table because they thought she wrote a book on it. No, she was just talking about crystals, but that's what they thought it was.
Yeah, I mean, I've been to several things. Of course, we have the Texas Bigfoot Conference in Jefferson every year, and then they have the paranormal conference there and everything. And we actually filmed part of the movie that I just got through with. I directed a movie and acted in a movie here not long ago that's called Man versus Bigfoot. And myself and David Ford. David Ford is my writer, and he's actually the lead director. I was his assistant, but got to do a lot of the directing myself because he was our main character. And so when he was on screen, it was up to me. And he allowed me a lot of freedom in that. And we really made a good movie. It should be coming out summer of 21. Okay. We're hoping. It was supposed to be out this summer, but with the COVID stuff, it put all of the stuff behind.
Yeah.
So our other movie we did was Something in the Woods, which is on Amazon Prime. People can find it online to watch. Really great movie. Really proud of the job there because there's no nudity, there's no bad language, and there's really no violence, grotesque violence in it. There are some tense situations and things, but we actually made a movie that you could take your grandmother to see, but it's still interesting enough for you to watch.
Makes sense. Good.
We wanted to go back to the old days, like with Creature from Black Lagoon, The Creature from Black Lake, all of those movies like that when we grew up, Frankenstein, all of those. We wanted to go back to that and give an homage to monster movies that didn't involve, to kind of be a little blunt, I mean, today, most all of your movies that involve horror or creatures or anything is nothing but some college girl that's running in high heels down the beach for some reason with no bra on, and she trips and falls, and here comes the monster.
Yeah.
Well, that's the whole story of the movie.
Right.
And we wanted to get away from that. We wanted women in our movie to look empowered, to look like any woman would look. We wanted them to look like real people. and get the respect they deserve. And same thing for the male characters and the elderly characters and anybody. We just wanted our characters to all look like the people that you know. We wanted you to walk and say, hey, I could know that guy.
I like that. Well, if you ever need extras, I think Matt and I will come join in if you need extras.
I'll volunteer.
On the movie. Yeah, we'll volunteer on it.
Woods.
We can run through the woods just with the best of them.
Hey, y'all don't know what you're doing by volunteering that, because I had a few guys that ended up covered in fake blood from head to toe. So,
we can do that.
Yeah. I did all the special effects on the movie, all the practical effects, not the computerized ones.
Yeah.
We tried to do as much practical. I'm an amateur special effects artist, and that's one reason why in my Bigfoot stuff, you never see me showing pictures or videos or anything of Bigfoot. And that's because with my background in amateur special effects, I feel that with me just showing a still photo of something, me just asking someone to believe that based on just face value would be a little bit dishonest of me, even if I was totally 100% above board, with a background in that, I just wouldn't do it.
Right.
Yeah. Jeff, I'm curious, you said you had an experience when you were younger, your first experience. What was that? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. When I was 15, a couple of friends and I were camping on the Sabine River, and my family owned a cabin on 540 private acres of land. So there was one road in to this place, and you had to go through 3 locked gates to get in there. On the river, come up the river or go down the river. Everything else around us for miles and miles and miles was rural, deep, thick swamp. We had camped that night. During the day, we went fishing and we'd caught fish and came back, and we had a hand pump well, and we would clean our fish at that old hand pump well. We would leave the entrails, the guts, on the ground at the hand pump well, and we would come back some point later in the night, because as a teenager, I made a lot of my money selling hides, like raccoon hides and things like that. Back in those days, a raccoon hide was $25 or $30. That's, because this is like early 80s. So we go clean our fish, cook our fish, eat our fish. It's rocked on during the middle of the night. I said, come on, guys, let's go look, see if there's anything eating the guts. And they didn't want to go, so I grabbed my flashlight. Anybody remembers flashlights back in the early 80s? We did not have these, real bright, 1200 lumen flashlights that fit in your front pocket. We had a light that carried 3 or 4 C or D cell batteries, and it had a dim yellow light that might shine 20 or 30 feet. We didn't have great things like we do now. And so I grabbed my flashlight with a 22 rifle, walked over probably about 100 yards from our camp where we would clean our fish. And as I got closer, I could see that there was something there humped over kind of at the guts. And I thought it was either a hog or a couple of 2 or 3 raccoons maybe, because it was too big to be one single raccoon. And as I got within about 20 feet of it, it stood up. It stood up on 2 legs. Wow. And I'm scared to death. And I'm not scared of anything. Never have been. I was raised in that river bottom. And I'm looking at this thing. I got my rifle pointed dead at its face. And I'm shining it, and what I'm seeing, only thing I can say was it was a raggedy human being, because back then I didn't know anything about Bigfoot other than I'd seen a couple of movies at the drive-in theater,
Yeah.
So I'm looking at this thing, and I'm like, Mister, I don't know who you are. I'm speaking to it. I said, Mister, I don't know who you are, but I will kill you. I'm scared. I will kill you. And this thing's just looking at me. And it's just looking at me, and I'm thinking, what am I going to do?
I know the feeling of having the dogs.
Oh, I was on the phone earlier, and Loki was doing the same thing. Wouldn't shut up.
We run a rescue, and we have dogs outside that just started barking in their kennels, and so our little chihuahuas and stuff that are in the house decide they got to open their mouths and let the big dogs know, that they're still dogs.
Yeah.
But back to my story. I spoke to it a second time, and I said, "Mister, I really will shoot you." And about that time, this thing's looking at me, and I remember looking at its face like I'm 20 foot from it. And it took 3 steps backwards, toe to heel. And that's very vital to remember that it walked toe to heel, because there's no animal in the woods other than a human being that can walk toe to heel backwards. And it took those 3 strides backwards, and it got back into the edge of the woods. It turned and walked away. I went back, told my friends. My friends laughed at me and told me, "Yeah, whatever," because they thought I was just trying to scare them. And we ended up, everybody went to sleep that night, but man,
Yeah.
Gosh, that's something else.
Yeah, that would be a little bit nerve-wracking for sure, being out like that. Oh.
Yeah.
So, you said that was when you were 15, right?
that was when I was 15.
So,
And I didn't have another encounter until I was, probably 40 years old.
yeah. Wow.
When I had my second encounter. Now, before that, I'd had a couple of encounters where down there where we fish, the same location
Yeah.
where we fish, we have what's called a live box that we put our fish in. And sometimes we would have as much as 100, 150 pounds of live fish in this box. And it's basically a big wire cage that floats,
Mm-hmm.
a door on it, the top of it. And we came back one day, we caught about 100 pounds of fish. We put them in the box. We were going to clean them the next day and have a fish fry. And we floated it out in the water. We left. The next morning when we came back, now this was in February here in East Texas. So, it was pretty cold in the morning. It warms up during the day, but it's pretty cold in the morning. About 34, 35 degrees. And when we got down there, the box had been pulled up on the bank. And we're like, okay, somebody stole our fish. We got down there, and the box lid was open. And it had a spring latch on it. You had to have dexterity of fingers to open this latch.
Yeah.
And something had sat there and reached in and pulled several of the large fish out.
Huh.
And eaten the soft parts off of the backbone and the gut part, but thrown them down the head and the rest of the bones down on the ground. And my dad looked down, and all over the ground were footprints. Looked like a human being, like barefoot footprints.
Yeah.
And it's cold. I mean, nobody's out there in bare feet in 34, 35 degree temperature in February. And Dad was like, "It's true." And I'm like, "What's true, Dad?" And he said, "All those stories you tell about Bigfoot." He said, "It's true. Nothing else could have done this." And that was probably my best day, because that was the day that I kind of got validated that I wasn't a nut job to my dad.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. So you're in East Texas, right? Where you're from, right there, East Texas?
Yes.
Okay.
Piney Woods, East Texas,
Piney
right
Woods,
here.
yeah. So there's definitely a lot of woods out there. Easy to hide anything out there.
Yeah.
I've seen
we have the Davy Crockett National Forest. We have the Sam Houston, which is right down the road from me. We have, oh my goodness, we've got 3 different national forests that are within a 10, 15-minute drive of my home. And on top of that, we've got the Sabine National Forest too. So we have literally probably close to 1 million acres of forested land just right here within driving distance of me.
Yeah. So you think about that, 1 million acres.
Yeah.
Easy to hide.
I mean, when I talk to people who doubt this stuff, they're like, how can something, I mean, we live, people live everywhere, and how can something hide? I'm like, if you've never, I mean, take an hour and drive out east of Dallas and just see how thick those woods get, or take a trip up to the Olympic National Forest in Washington and just see how there is nothing but trees for just miles. Like, that's all there is. Like, anything could hide in there, man.
Yeah, you figure the trees and the undergrowth and everything, you might not see 10 or 15 feet at some point.
No, you could be driving along I-30 or I-20 out east, and you can't see 10 yards off the road.
Yeah.
Something could be standing back there, and you'd never see it.
Nope, that's right.
Yeah.
I often get asked all the time, how can something be hiding in modern times? And I'm like, well, let me ask you a question. Have you ever seen a black-footed ferret?
Yeah.
In East Texas? Have you ever witnessed one in the wild? Because they are native to the state of Texas.
I didn't know that.
And I have hunted and fished my entire life here in East Texas, and within hollering distance of where I'm sitting right now, and never saw one until a gentleman contacted me. He raised quail, and he said that something is getting into his quail pens at night and killing his quail, and there's no holes in his fence, nothing. He can't find anything getting in there. So first thing I did, I went and set up trail cameras all around his quail pens. And sure enough, he called me. He said, man, going out there this morning, and there was feathers everywhere, more dead quail. So I said, well, see what we got a picture of. Went back, and sure enough, we had pictures of wild black-footed ferrets.
Wow.
Going through the chicken wire. They're small enough they can squeeze through the chicken wire.
Yep.
And going into the cage and killing a quail, eating it, and leaving back out. And ended up trapping 4 black-footed ferrets out of his quail pens and relocating them to another location. But, 40 years of living and hunting in these woods and spending literally, I spend maybe 250 to 300 days a year in the woods, and I'd never seen one before in the wild.
Wow.
I ask people all the time, have you ever seen a mink? There are tons of mink up and down the creeks in East Texas, but people can say, well, I spent 100 years hunting and fishing. I ain't never seen no Bigfoot. And I'm like, you ever seen a mink? You ever seen a weasel? You ever seen, some of these animals that are here every single day and nobody's seen them?
That's exactly right.
Yeah. I mean, I can, people don't spend as much time out in the woods as I guess they don't think they do, but people don't spend that much time. I can go out to my family's place in rural Parker County, and I know there's deer all over the place, but I may spend a weekend out there and I don't see them. And I know they're out there. So you think about something that is a minuscule percentage of a population of animals that we know exist, and man, it doesn't surprise me at all that something can hide for a long time.
Definitely easy.
And there's not that many people looking for them. I mean, it feels like there is, but it's not that many people really when you think about it.
No, not at all.
Well, a lot of people go in the woods, but a lot of people don't open their eyes. They don't pay attention. They don't see. They don't. If you go into the woods with a preconceived idea of what is and isn't there, then you're probably going to see whatever your preconceived idea is. You're not going to have an open mind about it and see different things.
Yeah,
definitely makes sense.
Yeah, I also say that's their house. That's where they live.
Yeah.
And if someone set up a camera trap in your house, you could probably avoid it pretty easily.
Oh yeah, definitely.
You'd see it. So yeah, or if someone is walking around making a bunch of noise, the way that people do out in the woods.
They don't go out there. They're not quiet.
No, they can avoid you easily.
Go out there making as much noise as they can.
Let me give you an example here. A friend of mine contacted me, said that he needed to borrow a trail camera. He had an idea that someone was either sneaking into or sneaking out of his home So I loaned him a trail camera, showed him how to set it up, the whole 9 yards. So he sets that trail camera up, pointing toward his house, a certain area where he thought this was happening. Never got a picture of anybody coming and going, but he still knew somebody was coming and going. They were just smart enough to bypass that camera.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So had he moved the camera without anybody knowing that he moved the camera, and boom, next day he got a picture. Thing was, it wasn't hard for them to avoid it when they knew it was there. Same thing with trail cameras in the woods. You put a trail camera in the woods, it's not hard for an animal that knows it's there to avoid it. Texas A&M University, I do believe, did a study with coyotes, actually. And they found that they never once got a photo of an alpha male coyote. They got all the subordinates, they got females, everything else. They got pictures of them on these trail cameras. And this was an area, I mean, they were studying these coyotes. They knew they were there. They knew they were in the area. The alpha males avoided the trail cameras every single time. Now, that's a coyote. That's not something with an intellect that's as high as yours and mine.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing.
It's cool stuff.
Yeah, it is. Well, we're just about out of time tonight, Jeff. And we want to thank you for joining us and informing us of all this, the Bigfoot activity, and give a lot of our people something to think about, when especially if they're out in the woods. Take time to silence their mind and silence their cell phones and take a look around you and see what you see.
Yeah, just go out in the woods. You don't have to research anything to be a researcher. You can go out in the woods and just pay attention.
Exactly.
Yeah. Hey, Jeff, before we let you go, I'm just curious real quick. Aside from your own personal experience, what do you think is the most compelling piece of evidence you've seen or that people can go and look up about the existence of Bigfoot?
Some of the most compelling evidence that I've seen, of course, is the Patterson-Gimlin film. I'm very, very good friends with Bob Gimlin. Love him dearly. He is another salt of the earth gentleman. And, that film has never been able to be proven without a shadow of a doubt fake. Even if you can't prove that it's 100% real, you can't prove it's fake. And even someone like me, who's a special effects artist, looks at it and says, there's no way possible in 1967 I could have made that costume, even with the knowledge I have, knowing the materials that were available in 1967. And you can't tell me that a couple of rodeo cowboys built that costume in their garage.
Right.
Yeah.
And have basically stumped every special effects piece of software, every scientist, every professional, blah, blah, blah there is. Those two rodeo clowns in their garage were able to beat everybody. Nah, they're two fine gentlemen, and they may one day, somebody may prove me to be wrong, but until then, I think that's my best, most compelling evidence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah. A lot of people point to that one. I mean, that's the classic one, but it's still.
There was a new one out. Well, that one where somebody had taken it the other day and kind of cleaned it up somewhat. Did you see that video come out? I was like maybe a week or two ago, and they cleaned it up, took some of the graininess out of it.
I don't necessarily like it when people take those videos and stabilize them and clean them up and do all of these things, because when you do that to them, you alter the original.
That is true.
And when you alter the original, you add things or you take things away from it. And when people do that and they say, oh, look, you can see a zipper. No, I can't.
Yeah.
You see it because you want to see a zipper. I may not see it because I don't want to see it, but I don't see a zipper. People say, oh, well, you can see this and that and all of this, and look at all, you see these they try to say there's other Bigfoot faces. No, there's not.
I've seen that one. I've seen that one too. It's just the trees and the leaves. Yeah. I've seen that one.
You've got to draw a red circle and an arrow pointing towards something and say, look, it's Bigfoot.
No, it's not
Bigfoot.
The red circles are my favorite. I've seen.
Yeah. I do.
What
I
is
will,
it,
and I would
Paranoia?
agree with that. And the one thing I will say though, that when this one they posted it, they actually what they were talking about was the movement, how the movement was very easy to tell. So I did like that about it. But I do
You
get
know,
what you're talking
as
about when
coming
they
from
do the
somebody
other
that
stuff.
makes movies and has worn a Bigfoot costume, this last movie that I did, I had to actually don the costume, and physically, I was the only person physically strong enough to carry our lead actor who weighs like 240 pounds. I had to wear the costume and pick him up and cradle him in my arms and carry him. And so I got to wear this costume for quite a while. And I'm going to tell you, there's no way I could have walked that fluidly for that long of a time across rough terrain
Oh yeah.
wearing, you know, I've got a big foot. I wear size 14 shoes. But the ones that were on me for the movie, the fake feet, were like 18 inches long. And it was like if you go and put on an old floppy pair of clown shoes and try to walk across the most rough terrain with rocks and logs and sticks and uneven ground, you're going to fall flat on your face.
Yeah, that would be tough, especially out there.
Yeah.
Hit a big old rock on your head.
Yeah.
Actually,
exactly. I mean, think about this too. In 1967, the cutting edge technology in movies and special effects, Planet of the Apes. They look like people in ape costumes. They don't look real, you know? That's the thing. So you're telling me that these two rodeo cowboys were able to create a costume better than $1 million special effects artists could in Hollywood. If that was the case and they were trying to make money, why didn't they just take that talent and skill to Hollywood?
Oh,
and
yeah.
they could have made millions of dollars making movies.
That's right.
Yeah.
A lot more money than riding horses.
Absolutely.
I mean, I know Bob Gimlin. I mean, the man is not destitute or broke or anything, but he's not living in a 5-story mansion.
Right.
You know, I mean, he could have made himself a mint in Hollywood if he had that kind of skill.
Yeah. I think that's just, people just need to accept it, that it is, and stop arguing about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, because it's actually, I can remember that was like kind of my first introduction to Bigfoot. That and the one book in the library at the school, but and then I'd go to the actual city library and get everything they had. But yeah, I love that video.
Absolutely.
Yep.
All right, Matt, you ready to call it a day?
Let's call it.
All right. Well, Jeff, thanks for joining us tonight, and Matt, thank you
my
for being
pleasure.
here, and thank you guys for tuning in to SoulWhat, Soultopia Podcast, and check us out on any of our podcast channels, and y'all have a great evening. Thanks.